Hey, I'm back with another installment video on this guitar. Now, if you haven't seen this guitar yet, I'm sorry if you have and you've been keeping up with these videos. I know it's probably getting old, me saying all this, but for those who are new and don't know about it, this is a Partscaster Strat. It does say Fender on it. I put a Fender decal on there. Please don't hate me because of that. But I bought an unfinished alder body two-piece, and I finished that in nitrocellulose, black obviously, and I got a Musikraft neck unfinished, finished that in nitrocellulose as well. In an amber tint, I reliced the neck and the headstock and the body. I've got a mint green Fender pickguard, Fender aged white plastics. I've got a Fender 62 or American vintage trim. Some of the stuff like the jack plate and the buttons and stuff are from Stuart McDonald. I've got John Benson hand-wound pickups in there. Got the nice CTS pots and all the form bar wiring, all that cloth wiring stuff. The good stuff's in there internally. And I've got about 30 videos talking about everything I've done to this guitar so far. This video in particular is going to talk about the tuning buttons I've got. Let me show you a close-up if you can see those. These are pearl buttons I've got on here. I do have a video out on the tuners themselves, the ones I chose. These are Gotoh SD91 tuners. They're vintage style. So in other words, they've got this like slot on the top of the post and you stick the string down in there, you bend it and you wrap it around. There's a lot of good things I like about these vintage style tuners. I haven't really ever had an issue with tuning or anything, so I just like them. And of course, this is like an old school guitar, like a 60s version, so I wanted to stay true to the tuners. Except, this guitar is sort of a nod to John Mayer's black one. Yes, I know it's not the same. I didn't copy the wear marks and all that stuff. It doesn't have gold hardware on it, but in general, it's a black relic Stratocaster. I really like John Mayer's music, so it's kind of a hint to his black one. So if you're familiar with the black one, or you're familiar with Stevie Ray Vaughan's #1 guitar, then you'll know that they have the same tuners. These are not those tuners, as you may already know. They're not gold for one thing. Now I don't know, if you know, you can comment below. I'm not an expert on the kind of tuners they are. I think you can buy them now from Fender, or you can buy similar ones from Grover. I don't know what the original ones were. And I think you can find them out there, but I think they're pretty expensive also. And the story goes, I think that Rene Martinez, who was Stevie Ray Vaughan's guitar tech and is now John Mayer's guitar tech, had an extra pair of these tuners sitting around, and when John Mayer built his black one, he wanted to stick those on there, which is cool. And I like the pearl buttons, but I wanted also to have vintage style tuners, so that created a problem. And the reason is because these style tuners with these style buttons are not available hardly at all. Now you can go to Japanese websites, and when I say Japanese websites, I mean the wording is in Japanese where you can't read it if you don't know Japanese. So I didn't feel comfortable trying to buy the tuners from Japan with my American money and hope it worked out. I looked on eBay, of course. I looked on reverb.com. I looked a lot of places and I couldn't really find these tuner buttons. Now on eBay, if you go on there, you can find the buttons, but most all of them have a hole all the way through the button themselves, and so they have a screw that would have to go on the end of these things. And these type of shafts on the Gotoh or Kluson style tuners don't accept a screw. They're a press-on fit tuner button. So I sort of exhausted my search. Now the one other option was, there's a company in Canada that sells Gotoh products, and they're sort of a representative for North America. You can buy customized tuners, or basically you can buy anything from their catalog. So I contacted them, asked them how much it would be to get just the buttons themselves or the tuners. And I think they quoted me just the buttons at like $85. And I'm like, no way. So I'm the kind of person that once I get something in my head and I want to get it accomplished, I will just stop at nothing to do it. Now cost was an object. I wasn't just gonna spend, like I said, with the $85 buttons, that's just unreasonable. And I wasn't gonna just stop at no expense to buy the buttons. But I did want to just get creative and figure out a way to do it. Let me step back and say that Gotoh has in their tuner model numbers, they often tell you what the button model number is as well. So like for example, these are Gotoh SD91 05MA tuners, I believe. The 05MA is a plastic white tuner button. And I think the nickel ones are an 05M, and they do have a pearl one that's the P5W, I believe. Now I got my tuners on eBay for about $17, and they came with the white plastic buttons. And even though I got them for a really good price, they are authentic Gotoh tuners. They're really nice. I think just some mom and pop guitar store had them in the back room somewhere and they were trying to get rid of them. And I know this is going to be a really sort of niche video. You know, not everyone is going to want these buttons on their tuners. But the idea is just get the creative juices flowing to maybe give you some ideas to make your guitar unique, or if you actually are trying to replace the buttons, maybe you'll get an understanding of how to do it and maybe what that process entails. So the way I got around this is I went to a site called iGuitarParts.com. I had bought some stuff for them for my Les Paul back in the day, and somehow I came across these tuners on there. They're essentially sort of cheap Chinese made tuners, but they had sort of a vintage style tuner. They didn't have the vintage post. They were more modern, where you stick the string through the side, through the hole that goes through the shaft, and you turn it around. You know, you've seen those. But they did have a pearl button that looked like these. And so from their pictures, I couldn't really tell, but it looked like that there was no hole all the way through, that they were press-on type tuner buttons. So unfortunately, when I got the box, I realized that they were not, and that they had a screw going through the end of the tuner button into the shaft. So the idea was, when I bought these, that I was going to buy these kind of cheap tuners and just swap the buttons out from the cheap tuners and put them on my Gotoh tuners. That was the idea behind it all. But again, the buttons that I got from iGuitar were not the ones that I was looking for, and I had to get creative on how I was going to put these together and how I was going to fill that hole. I'll get to that in another video about how I filled the holes on the end of these tuner buttons. So I know that was a lot of information. I just want to preface you on why in the heck I would do something like this, and I hope it gives you some ideas. Stay tuned to see how I did it. So I want to show you what these look like in comparison side by side. Of course, the three on the left here are the original style vintage Kluson or Gotoh type butterbean buttons, and then on the right we've got the pearl. You can tell the iridescence, and the ones on the right, and as we move around here, you can just see how they reflect the light, and they are slightly, you know, different shape. You can tell maybe a little bit. I'll show you closer up images of the shape and different angles and stuff, but just a comparison of what they look like side by side with the white plastic sort of typical or traditional butterbean style tuner buttons. So this is the box that these things came in. So opening up the box, interestingly, they came individually like this in a bag, right? So there were 6 of these bags, and each one had the tuner itself in there, and then the bushings were in a bag with the screws. So it's almost like they just picked from a bin and put it all together and threw it in here. But it's really well packaged. You know, you got the bubble wrap in there and everything. But I just want to show you that because, you know, when I'm ordering something from China, I really want to know what I'm getting, and there's not a lot of information out there. So if you buy something like this, or these tuners exactly, or, you know, tuners from this EY guitar place, maybe you'll have a better understanding of what they actually look like. So here we go. Here's one of the tuners, one of the typical tuners, just to show you an example, right? So here's what they look like up close. You've got a screw on the end, which I could not tell from the internet pictures at all. I was really disappointed when I got them in the mail and I looked at them and I saw that big screw on the end. My heart kind of sank, and it was like one other obstacle in the way of getting what I actually wanted. So in comparison, here is the typical Kluson style, or Gotoh in my case, butterbean tuner. So there you go. It obviously does not have a screw on the end of the button, and these typical vintage ones, as you're probably aware of, but they have this this type of piece at the top, the tuner post hole. The tuner post, you stick the string down in the hole on the top, right, and then you crimp it down or bend it, and then it wraps around the post. So these ones that I got from EY Guitar from China, they're more of the modern style. So you can see the hole in the tuner post there. It goes in sideways, right? And then you have a little bit sticking out and you wrap it around, and it tensions down on that more snugly. I actually really like this vintage design. I think it's great. You know, it was designed many years ago, and they improved it, I guess, but I don't really like the modern ones. A few reasons, because you know you got this little piece sticking out where you can prick your hands on it, especially the high E string. Another reason is, you know, when you pull the string off, if you want to reuse your strings for some reason, it's really difficult to get them back in and strung up. It's much easier to do with this, and I've never had any tuning issues with these style tuners. Maybe I'm an anomaly, but I've just never had any issues with these, and I really like them. So just a comparison, again, I think these probably are decent tuners, and I would use them. I wouldn't even worry about replacing the buttons or switching the buttons if these were the vintage style tuners that I wanted, but they're just not, right? And so I want to put these pearl buttons on these tuners. So let's take the screw out, and then I'm going to show you how easy it is to get each of these buttons off. Okay, taking the screw out now. So here's the screw, right? There's the tuner. Now I thought about just leaving the buttons on like this, right? With just a hole in the end and without the screw, but I thought that would just look really odd, and I didn't want to do that. Didn't want to be that weird about it or that unique. So that was going to be another issue, of course, that I was going to have to solve. But that's that. I want to show you how easily these come off the actual post. So here's how I'm removing these buttons, right? So I got this block, it's just a 2x4. This is not my original idea. I will try to give credit in the description below of where I got this idea. There's a couple of people on YouTube that I've seen do this. But anyway, it's just a 2x4, and it's a 1/4 inch drill bit, right? So a 1/4 inch hole. That'll be something that you'll want to note. And the guy who I got this from originally, the most detailed video, he said I think 5/8 down from the top is to where you would want to put your hole. I think it's more like, let's see, I think it's more like 7/16 or maybe even a 1/2 inch pretty much down. Yeah, so that mark that you see there is the 5/8 that I did originally. And I kind of just eyeballed it, and I thought, you know, it was going to be too low, and I wasn't going to be able to, as you'll see how I do it, I'm going to use a hammer, the claw of a hammer, to pull them off, and it was just going to be too low down. So I made it, like I said, 7/16-ish. I really just eyeballed it, and that's where my hole was at, and it's a 1/4 inch hole. Let me show you real quickly the difference in the shaft sizes of these. They look identical, right? But this is the Kluson style. It goes in pretty tight. It's not super tight, but it takes some pressure to get it in there, and then some finagling to get it back out. But this is the one that's for the main china. It goes in there really easily, right? So this tuner shaft on the Chinese one is a little bit smaller than this one. Just make a note of that. So how I'm getting these out is I put this tuner shaft in the block like so. Got the tuner there. You kind of like line it up, and then I come in with the clamp, right? It's your typical plastic clamp. And then I've got a hammer that I just put some tape on the ends of so I don't mark up or mar the tuner buttons, right? And I'll show you just how easy these come off. It's very easy. You could probably just get it off with your fingers if you wanted to. And I'm trying to get this in the camera, but see there, just pops right off. And you would expect that to be the case because they're screwed in. I actually thought once you took the screw out, it would just fall off, but it's not the case. They are on there, you know, a little bit snug. So now let's compare. Well, let's take this button off first, and then we'll compare the actual buttons themselves and the hole openings. Okay, I've got my Gotoh or Kluson style tuner in the 2x4. The guy who I got this idea from, he actually had some brads on the sides of the tuners to kind of hold it in place, plus he clamped it down. I decided not to do that. I was thinking about even making just holes and using the actual screws to just secure it, but I found out that I didn't necessarily need them, and it was just an extra step. Now these are a little bit more difficult to get off because they are press fit on there and probably even super glued down. And I don't even know that this is going to be easy to get on camera, or the best way to show this. It's definitely not the best conditions for me to do it, but okay. Wow, it came right off. So that was the perfect one to get off. The other ones took a little bit more finessing, a little bit more finagling, but it's the same idea, same principle, right? What you don't want to do is you know, if it's so tight and you're using if you're at a bad angle, you don't want to, you risk bending the shaft of, not the tuner shaft, but the tuner button shaft, actual turning shaft. So you obviously don't want to bend that in any way because you don't want to damage the tuner. But that one came off really easily. So I'm not going to show you how hard it is. I'm not going to show you the hard method. I'm just going to stick with that example. Now let's look at these buttons a little closer. So this is the Kluson style. You can see on the end there's only one hole in it. See there? You can see on the end is sort of a rectangle, right? It's rounded on the outer part, which you probably can't see with my bad lighting, okay? See, on the outer part is round, but on the inside, it's more or less a rectangle. So here's the shaft of the Kluson style. See, it kind of goes round and it gets to this point where it turns into, more or less, has flat sides, like a rectangle, right? That sort of a cross section there obviously matches the hole in this butterbean style tuner button. All right, so now this one, I'll show you this is the Chinese one, and it's similar, right? It's round at the bottom, it comes to this point where it's flat on either side. But if we compare the two, I don't know how well you'll be able to see that, but this is the Chinese one in my right hand, and the American one, or Japanese one, I guess, the Kluson style, in my left hand. All right, so if you can tell, the Chinese one is fatter at the top, much fatter, because it's got to accept that screw for one thing. All right, so when I put this Chinese one, the pearl tuner button, on top of the Kluson style, it was like this, right? And there's no stick at all, right? You can't press it on and it stay. So I got really worried, and I'm like, well, I guess I can't use these. I'm gonna have to throw it away, and I wasted all my money, and I got just kind of, you know, like, well, that was a nice try. But then I had the thought, well, I could turn it. Oh yeah, let me show you the kind of the cross section of this tuner button. So, you know, apparently there's a hole all the way through. The screw goes on this side, the more rounded side, and then this side is not the same type of rectangle. It's more, I guess, maybe an oval to fit that tuner shaft of the Chinese made one, but it's just way bigger, right? So this is the Gotoh tuner, this is a Chinese button. I put it on there and it's not tight at all. So I got the idea that if I turn it like this, right, then that vertical space is smaller than this horizontal space. I know you may not understand what I'm saying, but the long and the short is, if you turn it this way, perpendicular, then it doesn't even go on there, but there's a possibility that you could press it on there, finagle it, and make it tight. So that's essentially what I've done. And now I'm going to show you how I did that. Okay, so I've got this needle file set from Harbor Freight, because Harbor Freight is great for cheap tools. And if I was a professional and I use these all the time, I probably would invest more money, but a lot of this stuff I'm just planning on doing once and maybe never again, or maybe once or twice again my entire life. So I don't really need the best tools, I just need to get by. So I picked these kind of files, and I really don't even know if they're any different. You know, it says 12, you know, different files, but I think a lot of these are just the same, and they just packaged it in a different way. But anyway, so I'm taking these, and inside of the pearl button, that's the wrong end there, but on this side I'm going in sort of perpendicular, and I'm trying to open up that space a little bit. So it's not like there's a perfect way to do it, but I'm just getting in there and I'm working it a little bit, trying to open it up some, because if you just try to push that shaft on there by itself and do nothing else, it's really not going to go on there. And I'll show you, if I remember, on one of these, I've already done 3. One of them I did get sort of a hairline crack in the tuner, and I, you know, again had that sinking feeling and like, man, all this for nothing. I'm gonna have to just throw this away and it's not gonna work. But it was really small, and it didn't open up anymore. And actually, when I put the super glue on it, which I'll show you here in a second also, but when I put the super glue on it, the super glue kind of just filled it in and you couldn't even tell it was there at all. So yeah, so I'm opening this up and trying to make it a little bit more accepting of this shaft. And so then once I do that, I'm putting it on here and getting it started. Now I may have to go back off camera and file it a little bit better, but I'm getting it to the point where I can kind of just press it on with my hands a little bit, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so now this piece is the most ghetto / white trash, jerry rig, whatever you want to call it, redneck part of the whole thing. So I've got this channel lock pliers, right? And I don't know if you can tell what these are. They're picks, and I just taped them to the ends of the pliers. And the reason is because they've got very sharp ridges on these, and these are again from Harbor Freight. You know, they're not the best, they'll do the job, but what I'm doing, and forgive me, forgive all the dog hair, I have a Pyrenees mix and it sheds like a Pyrenees, so I got dog hair everywhere. I'm making this on the biggest gap setting of the pliers, and the reason I put these picks on here is because I don't want to jack up the tuner, right? I don't want to scar it and make all these marks on it. And the same way with the button. So I'm putting it in here, and I found that if I put this tuner post sort of in line with the pliers, I can get the best kind of angle. And then I'm coming down and I'm just squeezing. Now it's hard to get this going perfectly straight, as you may be able to tell, and I'll have to turn it a little bit here and there and really just work with it, and then push it on again by hand a little bit more and just work with it some more. Now ideally you would have like a vice grip or something like mounted on your table that you could crank, right? And you could set it up and then it'll apply even pressure, and somehow you could have this mounted to where it would. And the guy that I referenced earlier, he had something like that where he set up some angles and he had machined them out so that fit the tuner perfectly, and it held it in place, and you just kind of press them together. So this is for the rest of us that don't have a nice machine shop or anything, or all those nice tools. This is another way to do it. And again, this is a pretty sketchy way to do it, but it's actually worked thus far, and hopefully it will continue to work as I try to show you. And you know, see, that's going on crooked, right? So what you gotta do is just check it and finagle it back to where it's square or straight, right? And then you just gotta keep pressing and keep sort of guiding it as you go. So I'm gonna try to do all this on camera. It's not the easiest thing to do, but I want you to get the idea of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So I'm trying to show you that. So just going back and forth, kind of pressing it here and there a little bit, pressing it. And here it goes. It's going down a little bit better, making sure it's straight as best as possible. It's looking pretty good. So I'm gonna keep going here. And well, lo and behold, I don't know if you can tell if I can get this on camera, but I cracked another one. So this is not, obviously, the easiest thing to do is not a tried and true method. Hopefully I can correct that. And in the end, I think these are going to be okay. But that is something to look out for. Yeah, just being transparent here. I want to let you know what I'm doing and being honest that this could happen. Okay, I wanted to show you here with the straight edge that they're pretty much all even. There's no real gaps or anything. No, they're not, I don't have the screws in, but you can tell, just want to show you that they're all the buttons are on the shafts at an equal distance, and I didn't really have to mess around with them or get them, I didn't have to like, you know, try to size them up. They just kind of set in the spot where the top of the shaft, I guess, met somewhere inside of that body where it meets the other side of the hole where the screw goes in typically, and it just kind of like sets itself up. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is you don't have to really worry about the distance from, you know, like the tuner to the edge of the butter bean or the button, because they kind of set themselves up in a way that they're all even. So no issues there. So, and then just on this bottom part here where the plastic meets the shaft, just gonna put a drop or two on there. I sort of just kind of push it down there, the toothpick, so it gets in there nice and neat, or gets in there well. Now ideally you would have like a pipette with super glue in it, and you could really like pinpoint accuracy get that down in there. I don't have that from, you know, StuMac or some other kind of luthier place, hobby shop. I don't know, you could probably get them a lot of places, but I don't have that, and so I'm just going with the old tried and true off the shelf super glue, and I think it's doing the trick just fine. I did want to point out the difference in the size of these. It's very slight, there's not much difference, but the ones on the left, the Kluson style, are a little bit more oval shape, I would say, or a little bit maybe thicker on the ends. I don't know how else to describe it, but they're overall a slightly bit bigger, I think, where the pearl ones are more, I guess, sharp oval shape on the ends. They're not a point, obviously, but they're a little bit more of a point, less rounded than the Kluson style. And then it's really hard to tell on the side profile, but the pearl ones are a little bit maybe thinner in the middle, in that they're kind of have a steeper curve as they cut into the middle from this cross section or this angle side. I don't really know the best way to describe that, and this is probably as good as I can get just by showing you. But you know, you can kind of feel it more than anything, and it's hard to see there as well. But just wanted to point out the slight differences in the size, but overall and just by glancing at them, they're pretty much identical. So thanks for watching this video. If you watched the whole thing, for sticking with it. To be completely transparent and forthcoming, these are some of the sort of stress cracks that are in some of these tuners. I think you can see some of those, but you know, I am pretty close up here with the camera. You really can't see these if you look from even maybe like a foot away. I don't know, if you got good eyes, I guess you can. But yeah, it doesn't bother me. If this was a brand new guitar, it might, but since it's a relic, I think it sort of gives it a little bit of character. If you don't feel that way, of course, that's totally fine. To each his own, as always, with, you know, so many things guitar related. Just a really funny side note. The other day I saw a video of a guy who was playing metal on grandpa guitars. So he had like a Stratocaster and a Les Paul. So I thought that was pretty hilarious that he called them grandpa guitars. But anyway, I like these tuners. I like the buttons, even though they didn't turn out perfect. I'm just glad they're straight. I'm glad they work. And I'm glad they're pearl. I'm really satisfied with the functionality and the look. The cool thing about these to me is a lot of times they look white, a lot of times they look silver, a lot of times they look nickel. So just in different lighting and stuff, it's just really unique, and I like the way it turned out.